The 2025 AFL season is just around the corner, and AFL experts across the media are making their predictions for the upcoming season. I'm Kevin, and in this video, I'm going to be making my 2025 AFL Ladder Predictions. I'll be predicting 4 changes to the top 8, so stay tuned for that. I didn't really want to put Richmond last because it's actually pretty uncommon for teams to get back-to-back wooden spoons. But they did only just score 26 points in a practice match against West Coast. And plus they've lost Baker, Rioli, Bolton, Martin, Graham in a season which they only won 2 games. They've got a lot of draftees, a lot of them which haven't really featured in the practice matches. And so I don't see where the improvement is going to come for Richmond. In 17th spot, I've got St Kilda on the back of a horror injury run in the off-season, headlined by Marshall, Sinclair and King, who are among St Kilda's top players, but also other handy contributors like Philippou, Owens and Wood and Sharman. You know, it's been a poor run for the Saints. They had a shocking match against Port Adelaide in the practice games, and they're a little bit reminiscent of the mid-2010s North Melbourne, where they just struggled to attract A-grade talent to the club. Their latest failed attempt trying to get Finn Callahan, after also failing to get Zach Merritt. So I feel like the Saints are just going to crumble this year. In 16th spot, I'm predicting a big drop from the top of the 4. It's the thump from the fallen Giants. Yes, I'm predicting GWS to finish 16th. It's a massive call, I know, but they have had the most brutal run of form since September. They lost those 2 finals by, tiny margins after leading for like the entire game in both of them. Then they had 5 players get suspended over that costume saga that happened in November. And then to top things off, their best player in Tom Green is injured for the start of the year. And I just think it's all piling up on the Giants. Sometimes those sort of things that go wrong, they can just tear apart the club's culture, and I think that's what's going to happen to GWS. They don't have an easy start to the season, and I can see them going 2-10. Like, when I did the squiggle, I actually had them 2-10. So, yeah, like, if they have a shocking start to the year, it's going to be very hard to recover. Yeah, they might prove me wrong, and I expect to be proven wrong by this, but I want to make that one I called it type prediction, and that's the call I'm going to make with GWS. In 15th spot, I've got West Coast. I think they'll improve slightly this year. They showed signs of competitiveness last year, and if they can improve on that, I think they should be able to push up to 8 wins. They bring in Baker, Graham, Owies. They'll give them some experience. And Perth is never the easiest place to win, so I think the Eagles, they should show signs of improvement this year. In 14th spot, I know they've been in the bottom 2 for 5 years, but come on. Brisbane were the last team to be in the bottom 4 for 5 straight years between 2014 and 18, and surely after getting 3 established premiership stars in Luke Parker, Caleb Daniel and Jack Darling, surely North Melbourne should be able to push up the ladder. They have got some fantastic, exciting young kids like Harry Sheasel, like Colby McKercher, Tom Powell. And if they could just gel it together, surely they should be able to win enough wins to get outside the bottom 4. It's been long enough. Plus, they've got Clarkson coaching, so anything's possible with this side. In 13th spot, I've got another big slider, and yes, that is Hawthorn. What? Hot ball? I thought they were the most exciting team last year. They're the premiership favourites, aren't they? They just got Tom Barrass. They just got Josh Battle. They've improved the weakest spot in their defence. They're premiership favourites, surely. Hang on. Where did we see this before? We saw this with Fremantle back in 2023. There's been some other exciting teams that have completely flopped the year after a breakout season, like Melbourne in 2019, like St Kilda after 2020, and again in 2024. And there are countless other examples. Don't get fooled. They're a very young side, Hawthorn. They don't have established talent. They're young talent. They're exciting young talent, but they're not experienced players yet. So I think they're gonna be subject to fluctuations in form. Plus, Hawthorn, they've got a very difficult fixture this year. They've got double ups against Collingwood, Carlton, Brisbane, Port Adelaide, and they're 2 easy double ups, Adelaide and Melbourne. Not exactly Eagles, North or Richmond. By the way, they played Richmond and North twice. Hawthorn, so that did help them a bit. So unfortunately, and they're also got one of the hardest starts to the season as well. So I think for Hawthorn, they're going to be found out a little bit, and I think this is going to be a bit of a reality check for them. In 12th spot, I'm going to put Essendon, probably the most average team in the AFL right now. You know, I feel like they're not bad enough to like completely collapse down the ladder, and for the last couple of years, they've started the season very well, then fallen off, and I can see that sort of happening again. But I just feel with the Bombers, they're okay. They can be exciting. They had a pretty good couple of games in the preseason against the Dogs and Geelong. They looked quite exciting. Isaac Keiko might provide some X factor into that lineup, but they haven't really improved elsewhere, and they're going to have to rely on natural improvement, which I think they'll be around the mark. I just think that there are other teams that are going to be better than them. In 11th spot, I've got the Western Bulldogs. Their injury toll has absolutely crippled them this off-season. Headlined by Marcus Bontempelli, but it also includes players like Adam Treloar, Yamari Ugle-Hagan, Aaron Norton, Liam Jones, Cody Waitman, and a few others. So I think the Bulldogs are really going to struggle this year. Bevo's under the pump. However, helping them a little bit. Why I haven't put him lower? Well, one, they've got one of the best depths in the competition, and some of the players, lesser-known players they continue to put on the field, surprise us. They do have a very good playing profile, but also I think the fixture's going to help them. They get to play teams like North, St Kilda, Essendon twice. So I think the fixtures help them somewhat. They don't have the hardest start to the year either. They do get some of their easier games early on. So yeah, I think the Bulldogs, I guess they're good enough to withstand some of those injuries and beat lesser teams, but ultimately they're not I don't think they'll play finals this year. In 10th spot, they should be higher on the ladder, but I'm putting Collingwood here on the back of a brutal start to the season and double up fixtures. You know, they did get Dan Houston and Harry Perryman in the trade season, so they should probably improve on paper. However, the finals race is going to be very tight this year, where it's going to be separated by like one win. And that extra win against North, Richmond, or West Coast is going to be vital to lock up a top 8 spot. And Collingwood get none of those sides twice. And I think just like last year, they're going to be robbed of a top 8 spot on the back of unfavourable double-ups. In 9th spot, it's a side that's always competitive. They always exceed expectations. But I'm going to put Port Adelaide because there's a lot of things that are catching up to them. For one, their brutal set of double-ups. They play 5 top 10 teams twice, and the easiest double-up is against Adelaide. So again, none of the bottom 3 sides twice. Plus, they also lose Dan Houston, by far their most important player. They lose Zach Butters in the early stages for the season, and they just don't have the same level of depth. They've got questions in their defence and their key forward stocks, and I think with Ken Hinckley's time at the Power going to come to an end at the end of the season, and with that transition period with Josh Carr, I think the Power are going to slide this year. And in 8th spot, I've got their rivals pipping them, the Adelaide Crows. Look, I think Adelaide have done very well in the off-season in terms of recruitment. They've gotten players like Isaac Cumming, James Peatling, and Alex Neil-Bullen. They've had an impressive pre-season win away from home against Brisbane. And to be honest, like, the Crows over the last 2 seasons haven't been that bad. They just cannot close out tight games. So if they can close out tight games, if they can have a better start to the season, I do think Adelaide should be able to make finals, and they kind of have to, otherwise Matthew Nicks is going to get sacked. However, I do think there are other sides stronger than Adelaide, and that's why I've only got them sneaking into the 8. In 7th spot, I've got the Sydney Swans. I think mental scarring again is going to see them take a dip down the ladder. They did finish 8th last time they came off a thrashing in the grand final, so they should still probably make finals. In fact, they're not the sort of side to miss finals after a grand final smashing. They did make the top 4 in 2015. Look, I do think there are going to be some issues with the Sydney Swans. Errol Goulden is going to be a huge loss for them. But I think ultimately there are worse sides than Sydney that are going to fall out of the 8. So I think they should still at least make the 8. In 6th spot, I seemingly make this prediction every year and get it wrong. But come on, Gold Coast, it's time to make finals. You've got the best coach of the 21st century, Damien Hardwick. You've got Richmond's best player from last year in Daniel Rioli. You've got another solid defender in John Noble. Surely the recipe is there for Gold Coast to make finals. They have had so much young talent come through that side in the last few years. They've had some of their other their other draftees from like 5 years ago that have stuck with the side. Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson, Ben King, those sort of players. Surely they play finals. They won 9 home games last year. If they have a better run away from home, and they did win their last 2 away games last year, surely the Suns play finals this year. It's been long enough. In 5th spot, I've got the annual bounce back team, and that team is Melbourne. Yes, they had a poor season last year, but if you read their fixture, you'd be forgiven to think that they won 2 games last year. They didn't. They won 11 games. They were in the 8 as late as round 18, and they were 6-2 and 7-4. They were not that bad that they warranted getting West Coast and North Melbourne twice. Not to mention St Kilda, who I think will be bottom 2 twice. They've got them as well. And they also have a very strong record against Hawthorn. They play them twice, and they also play Gold Coast twice. So, yeah, I think Melbourne, Clayton Oliver should get better, Christian Petrarca should get better, and I think Melbourne should make the top 8 this year. In 4th spot, I've got Brisbane. I do think they'll still do well this year. They got arguably the best player from last year's draft crop in Levi Ashcroft. And I think Brisbane, they just won the premiership last year, so they should still be a pretty strong side. And they will have Will Ashcroft for the whole season. I do think they have a very difficult set of double-ups, and they did also win the premiership last year, so the hunger might drop off a bit. But I do think Brisbane are too good of a side to fall out of the 8. Instead, I've got them just finishing in 4th. In 3rd spot, it's a side that I could see miss the finals as well. However, I'm going to put Carlton here because at their best, they were a top 2 side last year. It's just that then injury struck and then they completely crumbled in the back half of last year. For all the talk about their injuries, their main injury concerns are Nick Newman, who's out for the season, and Mark Pitternet, who's out for the early rounds. Apart from that, the rest of their good players should be back by round 1. Oh, don't worry about Jagger Smith. He didn't even play last year. So I do think Carlton, they should be able to make finals. At their best, they can be a top 4 side. We'll see how they go this year. In 2nd spot, I've got Geelong. They bounced back last year. They made a preliminary final, and I think they're back because they're not exactly the oldest side in the comp. Yes, they've got some very experienced players, but they've been able to unearth some young talents as well. Players like Sean Manor, Lawson Humphrey, Shannon Neal, Max Holmes. You know, they're all having a contribution as well. Sam DeConning, probably going to be their new ruck. I think Geelong, they're a very well-organised side, and I don't see why they're going to drop off this year. And in top spot, I see a lot of parallels with the Melbourne 2021 side. I've got Fremantle finishing top. After a lengthy stint away from the finals, both sides had a breakout season. They then crashed down the bottom of the ladder, and then the year after, they both just missed out on the finals. Melbourne in 2021 then jumped into the top of the ladder, and I think Fremantle will do the same this year. I mean, okay, I guess the one downside, their fixture's not the easiest, but look at their team. They've got one of the best defences in the competition, headlined by Luke Ryan and Jordan Clark. They've got one of the best midfielders, headlined by Caleb Sarong, Andrew Brayshaw, Hayden Young, who should be back by round 2. They've got Luke Jackson in their ruck. They've got 2 young but exciting key forwards in Amos and Tracy. And they also just add Bolton to that side, who should give them the spark that they didn't have last year. Justin Longmuir is running out of time. He is one of the most under-pressure coaches heading into this season. But surely, this is the year Fremantle capitalise on all the potential that it has at its disposal. And now for the finals. I've got Fremantle defeating Brisbane and Carlton defeating Geelong in the qualifying finals, and Melbourne defeating Adelaide and Gold Coast defeating Sydney in the elimination finals. In the semi-final, I've got Brisbane going out in straight sets to Melbourne, who'll win their first final since 2021, and I've got Geelong easily accounting for Gold Coast. I've got Geelong losing yet again another preliminary final, this time to Fremantle, and I've also got Carlton defeating Melbourne to set up a Fremantle-Carlton grand final. And just like Melbourne in 2021, I've got Fremantle winning their first ever AFL Premiership. And now for the individual awards. For the Brownlow medal, I've got Nick Dacos. It's a pretty obvious one. He was cruelly robbed of a Brownlow medal in 2023 because of an injury, and in 2024 because Patrick Cripps broke the record, even though Nick Dacos would have broken the record if Patrick Cripps hadn't. For the Coleman medal, I've got a bit of a smoky in Nick Larkey. I think Jack Darwin coming into that side is going to free him up. And if North Melbourne are going to improve, I think that's going to come through Nick Larkey kicking more goals. He did kick 70 goals in 2023, remember. As for the Rising Star Award, I have got Levi Ashcroft to win the award, which his brother was so close but did not get due to also an untimely injury. And if Fremantle win the premiership, I guess the Norm Smith medal would probably go to Brayshaw or Sarong. And I reckon out of the two, maybe Sarong is probably the better big-time player, but really could be a toss-up between either of them. Or really anyone in the AFL. I mean, who's to say Fremantle would? It could be literally anyone. So, there you have it. These are my 2025 AFL Ladder Predictions, Finals Predictions, and Individual Awards Predictions. I hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe. Comment what you thought of the video down below. Comment your predictions. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.